So within most pharma companies, there's many different functions. And if I were to list a few, I mean, marketing, you have regulatory, you have clinical development, you have clinical operations. There's even some companies that have pharmacovigilance, legal, business development, sales. So all of these different sort of uh, functions kind of work under one roof, and each one of them have their own remit and their own objectives. And so a lot of that is dependent upon, which drug they're working on or therapeutic area, or are they doing something in the pipeline. So everyone sort of understands like when they first come in, this is your role, this is, part of, and within that organization or that function, builds into it and leads into the company as a whole. And that's why there's different leaders at different levels, because that's the whole point, because you can't oversee everything. So you have to have one leader that oversees this function, another leader that oversees another function, and then hopefully together you work, and you're able to communicate, because it's important to know what the right hand is doing, sort of compared to the left hand. So communication, I think, is like a big key thing there. And I think in that sense, it's sort of, to me, a series of checks and balances to ensure that whatever marketing is doing or putting in their visual aids are like medically or scientifically accurate, and that what they state essentially can be referenced. So I think a good example of something like this and how we kind of all work together is called a medical legal review. And different companies have different sort of abbreviations for it, but at SpringWorks, we call it MLR, so medical legal regulatory sort of group. And so there's somebody from regulatory. So their whole point of reviewing materials is from a regulatory lens. Then you have somebody who is on the legal side. So their remit is to, review everything from a legal lens. And then we have somebody that's on the medical side, usually from our medical strategy, one of our medical directors. And their role is to make sure that whatever is being presented is actually factual and can be referenced in some form, whether it's our own clinical data or some sort of publication or something like that. So that's a great example of showing like, okay, and they have to do this every day too, or at least weekly. But information is always kind of coming to them, and they have to do offline reviews, and then they come together and they have a conversation. And usually, who is submitting this information? And I'll give an example of like somebody in the marketing, and they want to have this visual aid that they want to give to physicians. They'll put it together. They'll have an agency kind of make it look nice and have all that information referenced and all of that, and then they submit it for review. And so again, every one of those groups will review it based upon their lens, and then they get together like, oh, you can't say it this way, or you said it this way, it's very misleading, we need to rewrite it. So it's just a great example of making sure that it's again, checks and balances, that whatever gets approved ultimately, it could be scrutinized in a court of law or whatever it is, right? Because it's a highly regulated industry itself. So that is, I think, the best sort of representation of that. But another, at least from our field team, is making sure that my medical team works closely with the commercial team, the sales team. So our sales team is just going to get hired very soon, but they haven't done so yet. But I know in other companies, we work very closely with them. We're not allowed to ride along with them. That's sort of from a compliance issue. We're not supposed to do that. But they'll have their own set of physicians they call on. We have our own set. And sometimes the sales rep will talk with the MSL and say, hey, I bet with Dr. So-and-so, it's a shared physician. This is what they're telling me. And then sometimes the MSL may be able to share some information as well to the sales rep. So everyone sort of is well informed on sort of what's been going on, because we want to make sure that it's unfortunate for physicians when they think of like Luis from UCSF, right? Like they don't know if you're a salesperson or you're a medical person. They just know you're from UCSF. So they themselves don't understand what we can and can't do, but we kind of manage it on the back end as well, just to make sure that it's sort of a seamless experience for the end person, which is the physician themselves. So it takes a lot of coordination, but that's typically what we do.